The first warning came in silence. No tremor. No flicker in the sky. No dramatic descent of a fiery craft. Just a change. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable unless you were paying close attention. Lights on one side of the planet dimmed ever so slightly. Communications bounced back slower than they should have. A few satellites went quiet. A few more followed. Then the silence deepened. At first they blamed it on solar interference. A spike in geomagnetic activity. A glitch in the orbiters. The usual excuses rolled out. People shrugged it off. Life went on. Until the sky cracked open. They didn't come like we thought they would. No grand speeches. No symbols. No warnings. They arrived in ships darker than night, drifting like shadows across the upper atmosphere. They hovered there, soundless and still for hours. Hundreds of them. Each one the size of a city block, motionless above every major region of Earth. People gathered in parks, on rooftops, in the streets, necks craned to the heavens. Phones were pointed upward. The world watched together, unsure whether to cheer or pray. Then came the message. Not in a language. Not in sound. It wasn't even broadcast. It was felt. In every mind, every thought, all at once. An image. Sure. Cold. Unmistakable. A map of Earth, glowing red. And a countdown, ***. 10 days. No one knew what would happen when the numbers hit zero. But every instinct screamed the same thing. We were being claimed. Governments scrambled. Military forces mobilized. Emergency broadcasts lit up every screen. Curfews. Shelter protocols. Martial law. But you can't shoot what won't move. And you can't negotiate with what won't speak. We tried to respond. Planes were sent up. Missiles launched. They never even reached the ships. Every offensive simply vanished. Midair. Gone. No retaliation. No sign of aggression. Just the same unmoving presence in the sky. Watching. Waiting. 10 days turned into 9. Then 8. People panicked. Cities emptied. Roads became rivers of headlights in the night. Supermarkets were stripped bare. Hospitals overflowed. Families clung to each other, trying to decide whether to flee or stay. Still the ships hovered. Silent. Untouchable. Then came day 5. That's when they took someone. It was in a small town. Not a strategic location. Not a capital. Just a place like any other. A town with homes and schools and grocery stores and playgrounds. One of the ships descended slowly, casting a shadow wide enough to darken miles. And then, a light. Not blinding. Not dramatic. Just a narrow white beam. From inside it something moved. Thin. Slender. Inhuman. It didn't walk. It floated. It passed through walls like fog. It didn't speak. Didn't look angry. Just present. Took 3 people. No struggle. No screams. Just gone. Vanished into the light. And just like that the ship returned to the sky. The world froze. Some said it was a test. Others called it a warning. The next day 4 more ships descended. Different towns. Different people. More taken. Panic turned to dread. We were ants beneath the boot. Until someone decided not to run anymore. Her name wasn't on any government list. She wasn't a soldier or a scientist. Just a mother who had already lost 1 child to the light. When the ship came again, when the beam touched down, she stood in its path with nothing but a sledgehammer. And swung. It shouldn't have worked. Everything we'd thrown at them had failed. But something changed in that moment. The light flickered. The ship paused. Then it backed away. Not far. Just enough to break the beam's reach. The woman collapsed to her knees. The world held its breath. The ship hovered. Waiting. And then, it moved on. It didn't take anyone that day. The footage went viral. People called her a hero. A miracle. A fluke. But others saw it for what it truly was. A crack in the armor. Something they hadn't predicted. Resistance. On day 3 the movement began. They didn't call it war. We couldn't match them in force. But we could adapt. They'd made one mistake. They underestimated what fear does to us. Fear doesn't just break people. It binds them. Hardens them. And when you press too hard, fear turns into fury. We learned fast. Their light beams could be interrupted by certain frequencies. Their ships reacted to magnetic pulses. Even the way they hovered could be manipulated with enough concentrated pressure from below. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And that's all humanity has ever needed. ***, a start. ***. Small towns became strongholds. Old mines were converted into bunkers. Radio towers turned into signal jammers. Engineers worked around the clock. Scientists went dark. Everything became repurposed for one thing: making Earth too expensive to keep. We weren't fighting to win. We were fighting to convince them we weren't worth the trouble. Day 2, a ship was grounded for the first time. We used every dirty trick in the book. Old tech, hacked systems, scavenged parts. It crashed into the ocean with a roar the world felt in its bones. That night, bonfires were lit across every continent. Not in celebration, but in defiance. It was a message: you're not welcome. Then day 1 came. The countdown hit 0. The sky lit up. Every ship began to move. They didn't attack. Didn't strike back. Instead they lowered. Not one or two, all of them. And from beneath their hulls they released something. Not weapons. Not beams. Spikes. Metal rods plunged into the earth like needles from the sky. Hundreds. Thousands. Each one embedding itself deep into soil, cities, oceans. And then nothing. No explosion. No gas. No noise. Just silence. People screamed. Others prayed. Children wept. Then came the second message. It wasn't a feeling this time. It was a sound. Oh. Rumbling. Rising. Until every screen on Earth displayed the same thing. A new map. But this one didn't show land or borders. It showed heat. Population. Motion. Everything about us. Every move. Every breath. We were data points. Tracked. Monitored. Calculated. We weren't being invaded. We were being processed. Asterisk asterisk. To them we were never enemies. We were resources. But something happened on the last hour of that final day. One of the grounded spikes, jammed deep in an old coal town, malfunctioned. It overheated. The readings went wild. And it triggered something deep within the ship above it. The vessel collapsed inward. Imploded like a dying star. When it did, the others paused. For the first time since they arrived, they reacted. One ship turned away. Then another. Then all of them. No words. No farewell. They left as silently as they came. And they took their dead with them. The spikes were left behind, buzzing quietly in the soil. Still pulsing. Still watching. And that's when we understood. They hadn't conquered us. We'd been tagged. Labeled. Not worth the effort, asterisk asterisk for now, asterisk asterisk. But not forgotten. We didn't win a war. We became a caution sign. A warning to others. Here live the humans. Trouble follows them. Don't get too close, asterisk asterisk. Now, years later, we still don't know what they truly were or what they wanted. But we do know this. They came to conquer. And we made them afraid to try again. Or maybe, we just taught them the cost of pushing humanity too far. The world isn't the same. The skies remain quiet, but we know better now. We don't look up with wonder. We look up ready. And in the deep places, below ground and shadowed labs. In places no cameras can see, asterisk asterisk, we're preparing. Asterisk asterisk. Because next time they won't come alone. And next time, we won't be waiting to defend. We'll be ready to hunt. But before we go forward, there's one thing you should know. One of the spikes just reactivated. And it's sending a signal to somewhere out there. And this time it's not counting down. It's counting up. To what? We don't know. But the last time they counted anything, the world nearly ended. This is just the beginning. No one wanted to be the first to say it out loud, but we all felt it. Something was waking up. The spike outside Anchorage was the first. It started humming again, faint at first, like static in your bones. People thought it was just the wind. Until every compass in the area spun out, and birds began falling from the sky. Small animals vanished from the forest. Not ran away, vanished. Like something erased them from the dirt. Then came the dreams. People within a certain distance, 10 miles, maybe more, began waking up screaming. Some cried without knowing why. Some didn't wake up at all. One woman drew pictures all night, hands moving even after she passed out from exhaustion. Hundreds of pages, the same repeating shape. A spiral made of thousands of little dots, each one a different shade of red. When the local authorities finally stepped in, they found the spiral etched into the ground where the spike stood. Burned into the earth. Not by fire, by heat. It hadn't happened before. This was new. And that's when we realized something even worse. We'd been wrong. They hadn't left the spikes behind. The spikes were the invaders. It hit like a cold wind through a graveyard. All that time we thought we'd scared them off. Thought we'd made them back down. But what if that wasn't it? What if the ships were just delivery systems? What if the real invasion started the moment the spikes touched dirt? The military went dark. No updates. No press briefings. Just silence. But the movement on the ground told a different story. Supply trucks. Armed convoys. Whole towns shut down with no explanation. Areas labeled containment zones. Drones in the sky. No-fly orders around every spike site. The rest of us had to rely on scraps of footage, anonymous tips, and broken transmissions. Fear spread like wildfire, but this time no one was running. We knew there was nowhere left to go. One of the researchers who escaped the lockdown zone sent a message that got intercepted and leaked. It was only a few lines recorded in a trembling voice. Asterisk, it's not just monitoring. It's learning. It's mimicking. Every movement we make, it remembers. Every thought we share, it responds. The spike is alive. Asterisk. He disappeared a day later. No one's seen him since. The deeper people dug, the more questions they found. Signals buried in static. Changes in the magnetic field. Wildlife behaving in patterns that didn't make sense. A man in Arizona swore he saw his dead wife standing by one of the spikes, smiling at him. When he ran toward her, she vanished, and so did 3 hours of his memory. The word terraforming began popping up again. Only this time, it wasn't about changing the planet's surface. It was about us. The spikes weren't rewriting land. They were rewriting minds. And it didn't start with full control. It started small, nudges. Changes in emotion. A sudden decision that didn't make sense in hindsight. Arguments where none had ever existed. People giving up things they used to care about. Relationships cracking without warning. Little things. Until you looked back and saw the pattern. That's when the real fear began. Asterisk, asterisk, not of being killed, but of being changed. Asterisk, asterisk. And maybe that was the point. Because we've always known how to fight what we can see. Guns, tactics, defenses, we've got those. But how do you fight something that's already inside you? I remember the first time I felt it. I was standing near one of the isolated zones just outside the boundary, watching from behind a hill. I'd been following the convoy routes, trying to get footage for a resistance stream. I didn't expect to see it pulse. The spike didn't glow. It didn't make noise. Just breathe. A faint tremor in the ground, like a heartbeat beneath stone. And suddenly I felt something heavy in my chest. Not pain. Not fear. Longing. I wanted to go to it. I didn't know why. My legs even moved on their own, half a step forward before I caught myself. I dropped to my knees, gasping, shaking. I felt like I'd been drowning without realizing it. I left that place and never went back. But I never forgot the feeling. And I never stopped wondering how many people were feeling it and never knew. Some tried to warn the world. Scientists, survivors, whistleblowers. But their warnings didn't spread fast enough. People were still divided. Half believed it was over. That we'd won. That we should just move on. The other half weren't so sure. We called ourselves the witnesses. We didn't wear uniforms. We didn't carry flags. We just watched. Took notes. Connected the dots that no one else wanted to see. We were scattered, disorganized, hunted. But we saw the pattern. One spike waking up wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And then, the second spike activated. This one was deep in South America. In a region already cut off from satellites. Local tribes had gone silent weeks before. When a drone finally got through, the footage was brief. A jungle that moved. Trees bending without wind. Shadows crawling against the sun. And then, an eye. Not a literal one. But something in the shape of the forest itself. Looking up. The feed cut out. They called it a glitch. We didn't believe that anymore. And people began disappearing again. Not in groups. Not during the day. But at night. One by one. The only sign left behind was the same. A spiral scratched into the wall or the floor or even the inside of the victim's eyelids. No one knew how it was getting there. Some called them possessions. Others said it was a mark of selection. But every person who disappeared had one thing in common: they'd gotten too close to the spikes. It wasn't just the ground they were reaching into. It was memory. Identity. The very idea of what it meant to be human. One witness, an old radio tech named Brenner, swore he heard a voice through one of his analog receivers. A child's voice, whispering in a language that didn't exist. He said it sounded like music and static and something else beneath it, like crying. He played it once during a broadcast. 3 people listening and said they passed out during it. One had a seizure. We burned the recording. But I still hear it sometimes. In the silence between words. In the stillness before sleep. They're speaking to us. Or maybe through us. It's hard to know anymore. Because here's the part that keeps me awake at night. What if they aren't trying to conquer us anymore? What if they're trying to become us? Imagine it. A force that doesn't invade. It becomes familiar. It reshapes thought, changes perception, until what's left on the surface still looks like you, still talks like you. But inside, it belongs to something else. That's the kind of war we're in. And no one's trained for it. There's a girl, Layla, who used to be in the military. Quiet, sharp eyes. Lost her unit during the first contact. She says she remembers waking up 3 days after her patrol went dark, covered in ash, no memory of what happened. No wounds. Just the spiral burned into the back of her neck. Now she works with the witnesses. She doesn't sleep anymore. She says it talks to her. Not in words, but in thoughts. She dreams of things that haven't happened yet. Deserts filled with towers of bone. Oceans drained into endless pits. Cities made of mirrors where people walk backward and never speak. She says it's not all fear though. Sometimes it's beautiful. That's what scares her most. Not the nightmares, but the parts that feel right. It's like a song she's always known. One that's trying to pull her under. I've seen others like her. People who've been close to the spikes and came back different. They talk slower. They blink less. They don't laugh the same way. They still love, still cry, still bleed. But there's something missing. Or maybe something added. It's hard to tell. And maybe that's the point. Because if they can blur that line long enough, they won't need to fight us. They'll just replace us, piece by piece, choice by choice, until the last real human looks into the mirror and doesn't see themselves anymore. That's why we keep fighting. Not because we can win in the traditional sense, but because the only thing scarier than losing is forgetting that we're human at all. That's what this story is about. Not just the invasion, but the slow unraveling of the soul. The part no one talks about. The part that doesn't leave a mark on the skin but cuts something deeper. Because while the rest of the world tries to move on, to forget, to rebuild, we remember. We gather names of the taken. We document changes. We map spiral sightings. We compare dreams. We look for patterns. Because even if the world wants to forget, we know better. We saw the ships. We felt the countdown. And now we feel something else. The numbers are still moving. But this time they're counting up. We don't know what happens when it reaches a certain point. But whatever it is, it's already begun. And the spiral is growing. It started moving again. The spike near Anchorage, the first one to reawaken, began shifting underground. Slowly, like it was stretching. It pushed soil outward in all directions, cracking frozen earth and making trees lean like they were afraid. People in nearby towns could feel it through the soles of their feet, a low vibration that made bones ache. You didn't hear it. You felt it. It was like standing too close to something alive and angry. And then came the lights. They were faint at first, barely visible through the mist and snow. Pale rings floating in the air just above the ground. No source. No shadows. They didn't seem interested in people. Yet. They hovered over streams, over rocks, over power lines. Then one of them drifted over a man's truck, and the whole engine melted. Not exploded. Just softened like wax in a fire. That night, people started leaving the region again. Those who stayed behind weren't the same. One man walked barefoot for 7 miles through the snow, staring straight ahead, whispering numbers that didn't make sense. Another locked himself in his garage and painted hundreds of circles on the walls, perfectly even, each one just slightly smaller than the last. When they finally broke in to get him, he was gone. No door open. No window broken. Just a trail of wet footprints leading to the wall. And stopping there. It was happening faster now. Like the spike was feeding off attention. The more we watched it, the more it responded. The more we studied it, the more it learned. And we weren't just watching anymore. We were being watched back. Across the globe, witnesses were going dark. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just silence. Someone wouldn't respond to a message. A tracker would go offline. A safe house would be found empty, food still warm on the table. We stopped believing in coincidence after the fourth one. I remember the night we realized the spikes were connected. It was late, middle of the night, and Layla was staring at a set of radio frequencies we'd pulled from 3 different zones. They shouldn't have matched. They were thousands of miles apart. But there it was, layered over the static. A rhythm. Like a heartbeat. And then voices. Not actual words. Just something close. Like a child learning to speak. Repeating sounds. Trying them out. Trying to get them right. And each time it got closer. Sharper. Like it was learning from us. Layla backed away from the console. Her hands were shaking. She said it felt like someone had leaned over her shoulder and whispered directly into her ear. We pulled the plug on the signal. Burned the backup drives. Wiped everything. It didn't matter. The next day, a woman in London posted a video online. Same frequency, same signal. Except this time the voice wasn't just learning. It was speaking. A clear sentence spoken in English. Don't forget. We're inside. And then the screen went black. The post was taken down within minutes, but copies spread. Thousands heard it. Millions maybe. And with every replay more people reported dreams. Headaches. Nosebleeds. Some said the spiral started showing up in places it hadn't before. Screensavers, condensation on mirrors, even burned into bread crusts. We didn't know if it was real or just fear getting too deep. But it didn't matter. The spiral was everywhere now. Then came the blackout. One night, every spike in the world lit up at once. Just for a few seconds. A blinding pulse. Not bright enough to cause damage, but enough to be seen from space. Every satellite, every camera, every broadcast, dead for 47 seconds. And when the world came back online, something had changed. People who had never seen each other described the same dream that night. A vast plain of red sand. A sky filled with giant eyes that never blinked. In the distance, a mountain made of doors, each one slowly opening, though nothing ever came through. One door had a mirror. Everyone who looked into it said the same thing. They saw themselves, but they weren't alone inside their own body. The governments couldn't hide it anymore. Some still tried. But the spirals were showing up in high places now. In city centers. In secure zones. Inside research labs. Even under the ocean. A deep-sea sub sent down to examine a sunken spike recorded something impossible. What looked like stairs growing outward from the spike, made of coral and bone. The sub was lost before it could reach the base. No one went back down. And then, finally, the countdown returned. Only this time it wasn't counting to anything. It was counting through. Like we'd already passed the starting point. And now it was logging progress. One spike had already reached 100%. Two more were in the 80s. Whatever they were doing, whatever they were building, it was almost done. And still, we had no idea what that meant. Layla stopped talking that week. She just stared at the wall of maps and signals, her eyes darting from line to line like she could see a pattern no one else could. Then she pointed to the latest location, a mountain range in Kazakhstan. A new signal. Stronger than anything before. Not just language. Emotion. It was broadcasting feeling. Not human feeling, but something close. Something that wrapped around the chest and squeezed. Something that made your stomach drop. Like falling in a dream but never waking up. We sent a small team to the location. Only one made it back. He didn't speak for 3 days. When he finally did, he said the mountain had no spike, but it had something worse. A shape. It was just floating in the air. A shape that didn't make sense. He said it changed depending on where you stood, like it was impossible to look at from the same angle twice. And it was watching him. Not physically. Not visually. But in his mind. It knew he was there. And it let him leave. Not out of mercy. Out of strategy. Like it wanted him to bring back the message. That's when we realized this wasn't about territory. It wasn't even about control. It was about memory. They were trying to overwrite what it means to remember being human. Not just our thoughts. Our past. Our entire story. Wipe out the records. Replace the feelings. Retell the dreams. Until one day we wake up and don't remember who we were before they came. That was the real invasion. And it was almost complete. Because now, people were starting to forget. Old wars. Old cities. Birthdays. Names of loved ones. Photos on walls looked unfamiliar. Whole chunks of history vanished from books, files, servers. And no one noticed. Except us. The witnesses. We started reading things aloud just to hold them in place. Started writing things in ink and carving them into wood. Anything to keep the truth somewhere physical, somewhere real. But it's not enough. The spikes are accelerating. The last update from South America showed a spiral large enough to be seen from the sky, etched across 5 miles of rainforest. The trees grew into the pattern. As if the land itself had agreed. The countdown there just hit 99.9%. Layla hasn't slept in 4 days. She's whispering again. Words that don't exist. Sounds that taste like metal. She says there's a storm coming. Not rain. A return. Not of the ships. Of something worse. Something that was left behind in us. Something that's waking up. And tonight, the skies are beginning to flicker. Just like they did the first time. But this time no one's looking up with wonder. We're looking up with fire in our hands, fear in our breath, and something deeper still. Something that won't let go. The need to fight even if we're already lost. The need to hold on to who we are, even if everything around us forgets. Because this is the edge. This is where everything breaks, and something else begins. Layla's eyes went blank. One moment she was staring at the flickering monitors, her lips moving silently, her fingers tracing patterns across the dusty tabletop, and the next she froze. Not like sleep. Not like fear. She simply stopped, like a machine without power. We rushed to her, called her name, shook her shoulders. Nothing. No blink. No breath. Just a long, slow exhale, like everything inside her had emptied out. Then she whispered something that didn't sound like her voice. They remember us. It was soft, flat, and wrong. Like someone else was using her throat. Before anyone could speak, every screen in the bunker flared to life. Not with spirals this time. With faces. Not real ones. Not exactly. They looked like people we knew but slightly off. Smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Eyes that didn't move. Hundreds of them. Men. Women. Children. All staring out from the blackness of the screens. Frozen in place. Watching. We scrambled to kill the feed. Yanked cords. Pulled batteries. Cut power. Nothing worked. And then, without warning, they all said the same sentence. Together. At once. With our voices. You are the infection. The words dropped into the room like cold metal. Someone vomited. Another fell to their knees, trembling. No one spoke. The lights died. And in the dark, Layla laughed. Not her laugh. Something else. Too smooth. Too calm. We locked her in the back room after that. Not because we didn't trust her, but because we couldn't trust what might be using her. The signals were evolving. That was clear now. They weren't just learning to mimic us. They were learning to become us better than we could. They were folding themselves into human form, human memory, human speech. Not through force. Through precision. This wasn't just an alien invasion anymore. It was a replication event. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst came when Brenner, the old radio tech, managed to intercept a signal deep within the Earth. Buried far beneath the spike field in Alaska. Something he'd never seen before, stronger than anything he'd recorded. He called it the deep core. And it wasn't sending signals out. It was pulling them in. All the spiral energy, all the emotion, all the signals, they were being fed downward. Not upward to the stars. Not back to the ships. Into the planet itself. We had it backward. The invasion hadn't come from the sky. It had always been coming from below. And we were just the trigger. Our species. Our thoughts. Our emotions. Everything about us had been leaking into the ground through the spikes like veins. Feeding something ancient. Something that had been waiting. Not asleep, buried. The spiral wasn't their symbol. It was their map. A tunnel. A spiral winding downward into something we were never supposed to reach. Or awaken. And the countdown? It wasn't counting toward global collapse. It was counting toward a birth. A reformation of something that had used 1,000 species before us. And would use thousands more after. That was the second twist. They weren't here to change us. They needed us to finish changing them. And we were nearly done. Layla started speaking again the next day. But it wasn't her voice. It was a man named Clark, a resistance leader we'd lost months ago in South America. His body was never found. His final message was cut off mid-sentence. Now, Layla was finishing it word for word as if she'd been there. As if she'd become him. We asked her how she knew those words. She just smiled and said, "There is no more Layla. There's only memory now." We thought we were resisting an invasion. But the truth hit like a punch in the chest. We'd already lost the surface war. Now we were losing ourselves. Because it wasn't about taking Earth. It was about taking our place in it. Twisting our story. Infecting our origin. So the next species that came wouldn't find us as survivors. They'd find us as the warning. That's why the spiral kept appearing. It wasn't a threat. It was a signature. Not of something coming. But of something that had already been. The skies flickered again that night. No ships. Just stars vanishing, one by one, like someone was closing a curtain between us and the rest of the galaxy. And in the dirt beneath our feet, something started to hum. The countdown in Alaska hit 100%. And the ground began to breathe. Not crack. Not quake. Breathe. Slow. Steady. Hungry. This wasn't the end of the invasion. This was the part we were never supposed to see. And we were still standing too close. The ground didn't just breathe, it opened. Not like an earthquake. Not like a crack or a collapse. It unfolded, slow and deliberate, like something vast beneath the earth had finally decided it was time to rise. Not with violence. With purpose. With intelligence. We watched from the hill above the Alaskan spike as the dirt peeled away in circular layers, each one marked with the spiral we'd seen so many times. Massive rings, glowing faintly, rotating in opposite directions as if the planet was revealing its true design from the inside out. For a long time none of us moved. No one spoke. The cold didn't matter anymore. The fear was gone. What replaced it wasn't bravery. It was surrender. A terrible, numb kind of acceptance that we might have always been part of this, just unaware. Then Layla, if it was still Layla, stepped forward. She looked smaller now, paler. Her skin seemed too smooth, like it had forgotten how to wrinkle. But her eyes were hers again. That defiant fire we'd known from the beginning, flickering like it was fighting to come back. She turned to us and whispered, "It's not finished yet." Behind her, the spiral pulsed deeper now. And inside the pit, something vast began to rise. Not a creature. Not a machine. A mirror. It wasn't glass, but it reflected everything. Sky, dirt, stars, faces. But distorted, showing what we were, twisted just enough to feel wrong. A world similar to ours, but empty. Lifeless. No trees. No sun. No voices. Just shadows shaped like us, standing still in rows that stretched into forever. Brenner cried out. His knees gave. He pointed at the reflection and whispered, "That's what they want to make. A copy of Earth. Without us." The truth slammed into us harder than any weapon ever could. The invasion was never about conquest or destruction. It was about replacement. They weren't taking our planet. They were taking our image, turning us into a template, replicating our patterns, our speech, our emotions, then wiping the original clean so no one would ever know. We weren't just being erased. We were being overwritten. And the countdown reaching 100%? It meant the backup was complete. Everything we were, already stored. The mirror began to shimmer. The spiral lines across its surface twisted together into a perfect circle. For a brief second it looked like a doorway. Beyond it, stars blinked in an unfamiliar sky. A sky without constellations. A sky that didn't belong to us. The world behind that mirror wasn't a copy. It was the destination. A new world, seated with everything we had once been. And we were just the last step before the launch. But Layla moved again, this time fast, desperate. She pulled a small device from inside her coat. Something we'd built months ago in case everything else failed. A pulse disruptor, cobbled together from old tech, theories, fragments of broken alien signals. It wasn't meant to destroy. Only to interrupt. To confuse. She turned to us, eyes burning with something human again, anger, love, memory, and said, "If they want our image, let's make it wrong." And slammed the trigger. The pulse exploded in silence. No sound. No blast. Just a wave of change. Every spiral on the ground flickered. Every reflection in the mirror shuddered. The faces inside that other world blurred, melted, twisted into something unrecognizable. Our history, the version they copied, began to fracture. And something pushed back. Not them. All at once, it was like our species remembered who we were. Not in words. Not in facts. In feeling. The pain. The joy. The fight. The stubborn will to survive even when it made no sense. It pulsed through the ground, through the mirror, through the pit. And the earth screamed. The spiral shattered. The mirror cracked, slowly, impossibly, as if space itself didn't want to let go. Then it collapsed in on itself with a sound like thunder being sucked away. Gone. The ground sealed again. The air felt heavier. The stars blinked back into place. Silence. Layla dropped to her knees. Her body trembled. Her eyes faded. Then she smiled. And whispered, "We're not the copy." We ran to her. Held her hands. But she was already fading, her body flickering like static. Her last breath was warm. Then she was gone, just gone. No body. No trace. We didn't speak for a long time. In the days after, the spirals stopped appearing. The spikes went dormant. The sky stayed steady. The dreams quieted. People remembered again. Names returned. Stories came back. And slowly the world started breathing like itself. But here's the twist. A month later we picked up a signal. Not from Earth. From deep space. A fragment. A reflection. A voice speaking in Layla's tone. It said, "They failed. But not all of them." Then silence. And the stars above shimmered, not wrong, but mirrored. Like somewhere out there, another Earth had taken a breath. And was starting to move. The signal never repeated. It came through one of our oldest listening arrays, the kind we thought was obsolete years ago. Analog, 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 like Brenner always insisted. Something about the old wires, the old static, it made the voices clearer somehow, like they slipped past the newer filters. The voice that came through was hers. Layla's. But not Layla the way we remembered. Not broken, not lost, not flickering. It was strong, steady, focused. The kind of voice you only hear from someone who's already accepted the end and still chooses to speak. She said they failed. Not all of them. We didn't know what that meant at first. Whether she meant the invaders failed to finish the replication. Or that not all of them failed, that some of the invaders still existed somewhere waiting. For weeks we debated it in the bunkers on the open channels. Survivors started writing again. Posting again. Quiet forums, hand-printed letters, whispered stories passed around campfires. We were trying to understand. Trying to rebuild meaning. But maybe understanding wasn't the point. Maybe surviving was. Because life started returning in small pieces. The weather returned to normal. Wildlife crept back to the edges of the old spike zones. The spirals faded from walls and mirrors and windows. People laughed again even if it was quiet and cautious. We never found Layla's body. We never found any sign of her equipment either. But what she left behind, her actions, her sacrifice, became something we couldn't ignore. Something we wouldn't forget. She didn't destroy the invaders. She disrupted them. Disoriented them. Gave us a chance to rewrite our own ending before they could write it for us. And that mattered. Because humanity's greatest strength has never been force. Or knowledge. Or even invention. It's always been memory. The way we hold on to things no matter how much the world tries to make us forget. The way a father remembers the sound of his child's laugh. The way a song from 100 years ago can still make someone cry. The way we write stories and pass them on like they're gold. The invaders tried to copy us. But they couldn't replicate that. They couldn't copy the moments we don't even understand ourselves. Why we help strangers, why we grieve for people we never knew, why we dream of better days when there's no reason to. They took our reflection. But we kept our soul. The witnesses scattered after the disruption. Some went back to what was left of their homes. Others stayed underground, monitoring the old signals. A few disappeared entirely, either walking away from the fight or choosing a quieter one. Brenner went north. Said he wanted to live where the radio waves didn't reach. Before he left, he gave me the last recording Layla ever made. Not the one the world heard. A different one. It was short. Just a few lines, almost like she knew what was coming. She said, "If they come again, it won't be the same way. Next time they'll offer peace. Maybe even love. They'll sound like us. Feel like us. But watch for what's missing. Watch for silence where there should be memory." Then she laughed, tired and warm. And said, "They forgot what humans do when we're backed against the wall. We don't surrender. We remember. And we burn." I keep that recording with me. I don't play it often. Just enough to remind myself that someone fought when it would have been easier to give in. The spikes are still here, buried beneath the surface. Dead for now. But we don't trust them. We monitor them. We take samples. We teach kids how to recognize the patterns, the signals, the signs of replication. We don't let our guard down again. Governments came back slower than people expected. The old systems didn't fit anymore. Too rigid. Too late. So new ones formed, local, smaller, tighter. Trust became currency. Memories became law. And stories? They became everything. We told the truth. We told the lies that kept people brave. We passed down what we'd seen, what we'd felt, what we'd nearly become. We let ourselves cry. But we didn't let ourselves forget. There were still questions we couldn't answer. Where did the invaders come from? Why Earth? How long had the spikes been dormant before they activated? Were we just another file in a library of species they'd cataloged and overwritten? We never got those answers. Maybe we never will. But maybe we don't need to. Maybe the only thing that matters now is that we didn't disappear. That we didn't let them finish what they started. That when everything was about to break, we broke back. There's a place in Alaska now where the ground still glows faintly at night. People leave things there sometimes. Letters, keepsakes, pieces of lives lost in the collapse. A woman once brought a violin and played a lullaby for her brother. A child left a stone shaped like a heart. Someone carved a name into a tree. Not their own. Someone they didn't want the world to forget. We call it the memory pit. Not a grave. A reminder. A place to prove we were here. That we felt. That we resisted. Some say they still hear Layla's voice there when the wind moves just right. Others say they hear something else entirely. But no one leaves in fear. Not anymore. Because the world didn't end. Not the way they planned. We walk forward now, not in victory, not in comfort, but in truth. We are damaged. scarred, still learning to trust again, still piecing together what was stolen. But we are human, and we don't vanish quietly. They came to conquer. We made them a warning. And now, across the stars, wherever the spiral is seen, there's a message written into the dark. Beware the Earthborn. They remember. This story moved you. If you felt the weight of every word, if you believe in the strength of humanity, please like, share, and subscribe. Not just to support the story, but to carry its memory forward. Let's remind the world. We remember. And we're not done telling our stories.